It is the saddest day in a young man's life when he wakes up and says to himself, quite reasonably, that I shall never play the Dane. I plagiarized that from Uncle Monty, with Nell and I, but I figured in this room you have to start with something theatrical. I'm not an actor, and I'm not good at public speaking, so we have to come up with some sort of thing where I say something like, "Come on, Scotland," and everyone goes, "Okay," or like something. So I have a bit of... So we'll start with it. So I was at the hotel, and I was in the elevator with a guy who works at the hotel, and he goes, "First time in Scotland, is that?" And I said, "No, actually, I lived here in 1991, City of Culture, Glasgow, when it was City of Culture for Europe." And he said, "Rangers of Celtic." And I said, "That's funny because I lived in Hillhead, which is near the Union. Right next to Hillhead is Partick. And Partick is sort of a tough neighborhood. And they have a football team called Partick Thistle. Partick Thistle, Partick Thistle, Partick. I like the songs because there's no words to them. And so I used to have this funny thing, when I lived there so I tried it out with the guy in the elevator, and I said, I'm going to say like, "Rangers of Celtic," and I go, "Partick Thistle," and he goes, "Oh, stay away from he's a bloody bampot." And bad accent, I know. But he said, no, you should say like a funny joke. So the only joke I know, which was a popular joke at the time SNP was a big deal, now a big deal again, in Scotland. So I'm going to start with a funny joke because the guy in the elevator told me to. It goes something like this. Right, so it's the time of Culloden, and there's the English army, and they're clearing out the Highlands. And they come up, and on yon hillock is a Highland gentleman. And the English general says, "Right, go get him off that mountain." Because that's how English people talk in Scotland, with a Scottish accent but falsetto. So they send 10 soldiers uphill, fight, go around the hill, come back. Highland gentleman says, "Right, you bastards, I'm for you. See me, I'll take yous all on." So English general says, "Right, send 20 men up that hill and get him down." Up 20 men go, commence the fight and go around the hillock. Come back. One English soldier on his hands and knees, half his head gone, says, go back, there's 2 of them." I'd like to warn everyone, I've had a few ales. We're about to get spicy. Thanks to the advisory chair, Fiona, who, by the way, is not only, anyway, I've known her for a while. She's amazing, and she's also amazing in her fashion. I was just back there saying she's stylish, smart, brutally smart. Love her. Thank you to Chris Shaw and the festival chair, Lisa Campbell, for having me here. This happens to be one of my favorite things, talking to people in media about media about media. You said about media twice. I like media. Charles Allen called the MacTaggart lecture the longest job application in the industry, insinuating that sort of media types log rolling, looking for bigger and better gigs. Now, in response to that, just a few years ago, Kevin Spacey, at this lecture said, "I'm not someone," I quote, "I'm not someone with an important job in broadcasting using this speech as an audition for an even more important job in broadcasting." Well, he wasn't. But I am. So I would like to say, yes, thank you. I accept. I will run the BBC going forward. Come on, Scotland! Okay! That'll continue, and by the end, we'll be burning the place down. My first line of business as CEO will be to replace all 1,700 home improvement shows and 3-hour specials about the gardens of Kent with exciting clickbait shockers about child-eating cannibal warlords and cooking shows from North Korea with our new host, Kim Jong-un, all on acid. We can finally move together forward, happy, new media and old media, for once in our miserable lives. Now, if there's any press in the room, this is your headline. Shane Smith single-handedly destroys the storied and cultural history of the BBC. Thank you, and good night. Come on, Scotland! It's going to get better. It's not, I mean, I'm Canadian, and so you start off thinking that's outlandish because we're colonial, so we think we're worse. But the interesting thing is that there's already a Chancellor of the Bank of England, and if I ran the BBC, it would sort of complete our sneaky, passive-aggressive takeover of the UK. You ready? Everyone ready for this? I'm about to do some fucking crazy shit right now. Because the joke that the elevator dude told me to do is over. Now we're getting into the meat. When I first got asked to do this lecture, they called me up and they said, you know, what are you going to talk about? You know, give us a quote. And I said, well, I don't know, I'll do something pithy and controversial because Brits like tabloids. So I'll do something like that. So here's what I said. I said, and I quote, "This year will be a bloodbath. New media will consolidate or get bought up by old media who will continue to flail about in the froth of de-stratification of the status quo. In the midst of this chaos, new media monoliths will be born. Good times, discuss." And I thought to myself, well, that ought to sell some tickets. It sort of did. Or 3/4, I guess. Standing room only would have been a bit better. But I don't have a magic crystal ball, but the signs were there to see and are still there to see. So I want to take a look at what actually happened in the media landscape since that quote. And we can start with old media, or as I know them, MSM, mainstream media. Now, over the years, I've had a lot of dealings with all of them. Time Warner tried to buy us. Fox, at some point, tried to buy us. Early on in our existence, Viacom tried to buy us. And we've recently done a deal with Disney. And besides my current partner, Disney, who are wonderful in all regards, they all leaked things to the press during or after our deals. They tried to give us haircuts on valuation. Most tried to censor us, naughty, and acted in a way that's just not really cricket. So today I'm going to get my revenge and talk about how people are now trying to buy them. Woo! Last week, The Hollywood Reporter had an article about Roger Ailes being kicked out of Fox, and the company is now reputedly looking to buy Time Warner and take over CNN, which would make it the largest news organization in the world. In fact, Fox made a bid for Time Warner last year. It wasn't successful, but just think about it. Why would they do this? You have Rupert, who started out in the second largest magazine in the hot market of Adelaide. And he's now going to go out by putting together the largest news organization in the world. So egotistically, he would want to do that. James Murdoch, a huge arrival upon the scene. So they're going to actually go after them, and I believe they'll go after them quite hard. Variety wrote early this summer about how Time Warner is now the perfect takeover target, and that Fox is not the only suitor. Because it recently came about, it was leaked, that Apple has already tried to buy Time Warner, and that Tim Cook also wants to buy Netflix. I said I've had a few ales, relax. Now imagine the disruption to the mainstream media if Apple buys Time Warner and Netflix, which they could do with their pocket change. Imagine what would happen then. That's what the rumors is going on right now. On top of that, Viacom is imploding, and it continues its sort of Shakespearean decline. CEO Philippe Dauman, or Phil Dowman as he was born, was ousted over the weekend, and the rumor is that Time Warner might actually make a bid for it. Why? In order to defend itself against Fox. Now, Viacom wants CBS. It would buy these guys to sort of stave off an unwanted merger. So what you have is the most froth in the history of mainstream media happening right now. In the meantime, there were a few other multi-billion-dollar mergers. Comcast bought DreamWorks, AT&T bought DirecTV, and the list goes on. So what we're seeing is a consolidation of mainstream media. And if it keeps going, which it will, the big five will soon be the big three. And if Viacom does what I hope it'll do, the big two. That's a joke. Or not. Now, Univision, let's go to new media. Today, Univision bought Gawker and closed it down. Verizon bought Yahoo after already purchasing AOL and HuffPost. Ariana Huffington from the HuffPost left, so now they have the HuffPost with no Huff. Comcast took large stakes in BuzzFeed and Vox. Turner bought Refinery, or a piece of Refinery 29. Axel Springer bought Business Insider. Verizon and Hearst bought Complex, which was interesting because we were in the bidding for that, and they outbid us, and they're our partners, so that was fun. And we're not immune. We did a strategic deal with Disney. So why all of this heat? Why all this froth? Well, because there's a moth upon my head. I can't wait to read that transcript in the Guardian tomorrow. It's all happening because there's a moth on my head. Shane Smith finally loses it. New media is going through what publishing went through 20 years ago. So I just got back from Cannes Lions, and there was talk, all of the talk was about the death of the 30-second spot. Now, what does that mean? It means that most of the basis of the funding of TV and internet content, otherwise known as the commercial, is dysfunctional, and that brands are dissatisfied with the traditional, ubiquitous global spots and dots campaign. Now, this in turn means that those platforms will have to change or alter their advertising base. Which brings us to programmatic ad buying. Who knows what that is? That's probably the biggest single shift in new media in history. Here's what it is. Agencies, and I'm going to go off script because I know what this means. Agencies used to have clients for 20 years. So WPP would have Ford or Budweiser or what have you for years and years and years. And then they decided to go up for review every year. And they do this to shave margin, to say, okay, well, these guys will do it for 9%, these guys will do it for 8%. So what's happening is they go up and they shave. And the only way that they can make money is through programmatic ad buying, which is an algorithmic ad buy. And what it is it's a reverse auction. So when you go to sell your house, which you have a nice one, it's beautiful, $14.95 an hour, working hard to get ahead in life, you try to get the highest price. Whereas in this thing, the algorithm buys it for the cheapest price. So it puts downward pressure on CPMs. This is now causing huge problems for the biggest scale plays. And if that wasn't fun enough, Apple this year made all of their phones ad blocking positive, meaning you can block ads. In fact, up to 50% of the web is now ad blocking, so you can block out ads if you want. Add that to DVR and TV consumption, and it not only wipes out the 30-second spot, it totally eviscerates display advertising as we know it. Talk amongst yourselves as I have a drink. Thank you. You can take that call if you want. I can wait. So much like the steady decline of print ad dollars over the last 20 years, which culled the flock of traditional publishing, of which I'm a member, downward pressure on CPMs will cull a lot of digital media platforms. Now add to all this money bugaboo the fact that Facebook and Google represent 70% of online video between them. So when they sneeze, we catch cold. And if they change their algorithm, God help us all. What happened this year? Facebook did just that. They changed it to weigh their personal posts higher than their publishers' posts, meaning that individuals get more juice than, for example, the New York Times. What does this do to online sites? Well, it's bad. It's quite bad. Because now there's less money and there's less traffic. So, I don't know what to do now because we're not moving the teleprompter on. And without the teleprompter, I'm dead. I once bought a pair of shoes when I was 7. So anyways, it means a lot less traffic and it means a lot less money. It means that we're going to sit there. You can keep going. There we go. Here we go. Perfect. In the long term, it means a changing playing field, a sort of mild to medium dose of chaos, a fast-moving and ever-shifting, highly volatile marketplace in which only the most nimble and dynamic companies will survive. I know you thought I was making it up till that fuck up, but it's pretty good, I think. So, due to this fact, and I'm going to make some predictions right now, there's going to be a lot fewer content sites that are out there going forward. In fact, I'll predict that as many as 30% at least will go away this year, or merge, or sell their URLs. On top of that, the big scale plays will be bought up by MSM so they can look smart and be digital first. And anyone with half a brain in digital is making strategic alliances to have a war chest ready to weather the storm. And this is all if everything continues tickety-boo. Because if there's another economic downturn, which is in the cards, all of this gets much worse. Thank you and good night. Come on, Scotland! We're starting to get with it. By the way, to all the apprentices out there, I'm going to call on you in the end because I'm going to ramp up. I'm starting slow. So get ready. So to sum up, there's fewer mainstream media players, fewer new media players, and there's an M&A frenzy to combine the survivors. What we're seeing today is just the beginning. Now, this is happening for many different reasons. Media consumption is changing. It's moving erratically between screens, mobile, online, TV, OTT. Bundles are evolving to a la carte, and audiences want either low ad loads or no ads altogether. And this breeds chaos. So, brands are confused. Platforms are confused. Networks are confused. Carriers are confused. Ball of confusion. That's what the world is today. Hey, hey. Hits the 80s, right? Yeah. Everyone's young here. Now, all of this flux is happening for all the reasons previously stated, but the overarching reason is that for the first time ever, millennials became a bigger cohort than the baby boomers as a socioeconomic group. Now, the baby boomers have had a stranglehold on media and advertising for an entire generation. And that stranglehold is finally being broken by a highly educated, ethnically diverse, global thinking, hard to reach generation. And media is having a hard time adapting to this rapid change. There's a de-stratification of the status quo, which is why you see all of this movement and all of this chaos. It's now a different market, and it consumes media in a different way. It can't be advertised to in traditional means, and it wants media to be specific only to them. Now, this is hard for baby boomers to get their heads around, since it's been them and only them for about 40 years. So you have a lot of baby boomer executives saying, I don't know, put a skateboard in it. This, of course, does not work. The problem is there's no easy solution to this complex conundrum. So what then must we do? Well, let's look back into history for some advice for some heady fellows. Let's look at MacTaggart, the namesake of this lecture. And he said, I quote, "What we need are people who are excited by the possibilities and to say, the hell with limitations, we'll break the rules. I think we've got far too many damn rules." Here fucking here. I couldn't agree more. So let's break some rules. First, let's open shit up. Media today is like a private club. It's so closed that most young people feel completely disenfranchised. You have to hand it over to the kids. Young people have to shoot it. They have to cut it. They have to host it. They have to do it all. There's a language, there's a tonality, and you can't fake it. This generation is the smartest, most educated, most savvy generation in history. Cartoons are made to sell cereal. They have the most sophisticated bullshit detector in history. And the only way to circumvent that bullshit detector is to not bullshit. Now, everybody down here is saying, good, yes, give it to the kids, yes, that's what we should do. The problem with that, and I challenge some of my mainstream media colleagues to this, is giving $10 million budget to a 23-year-old straight out of school to do a TV series. How many people on this floor are going to do that? There's no shame in saying no, because most people in mainstream media won't do that. Now, because I'm a high-functioning alcoholic, with a strong sort of taste for psychedelics. We do that. And sometimes that 23-year-old ends up in Mexico City with my production budget. But in most cases, by the way, not working for me. But in most cases, we end up with gold. Next, you have to get on all screens simultaneously because consumptions is all screens all the time. And you have to have OTT, and on top of that, you have to have native advertising that's sticky enough to get by the ad blocking and the DVRs. And it all has to be in-house so you can own the means of production. So this is the holy grail of media right now. 3 screens, 1 screen, OTT with innovative monetization. And everybody out there knows that we have to get there. So are we doing it? No. In fact, we're fighting against it. The media industry is reacting the exact same way that the music industry did when peer-to-peer came and threatened them. Instead of innovating, we're retreating with a lot of lawyers surrounding us to hold on to our IP and an ever-decreasing piece of the pie. And these lawyers are throwing up roadblocks so that they can protect this stuff and whatever money is sloshing around. So everyone asks me, okay, well, what roadblocks, Shane? What are you talking about, you paranoid motherfucker? And I say, look, it's almost impossible to program 3 screens, 1 screen OTT at the same time because of exclusivity issues and day-and-day rates or regulations. Now, I could go on for hours about this, but basically, our first deal, I'm going to leave here for a second. Our first deal was with Rogers in Canada, first deal outside of America. And Rogers is interesting because they're the largest telco company, the largest online company, the largest TV company. And it's funny because in communist Canada, where I'm from, there's one company that gets to run everything, but it isn't the government. So we can actually program mobile, online, and TV all at the same time. And it actually works, and it works marvelously. In fact, we had a 10x growth in Canada in 1 year. And the problem is when you go to other countries, you know, TV wants TV, mobile wants mobile, online wants online. But when you can actually do it, it works. On top of this, native advertising agencies. So we talked about the death of the 30-second spot. So we came up with native ad. We were one of the first to innovate native advertising online. What is native advertising? Basically, it's going back to pre-spots and dots. So you're going back to like when you made only the Shadow Knows, but it was sponsored by Calgon, but it could have been sponsored by Chesterfield. It's like sponsorship, or it's sort of wrapping the media in something that the same team who made the media made it so it actually makes sense rather than we're going to do a Tampax commercial for a skateboarding show. And so we decided, okay, we'll start making this. Now, if you do that and you go direct to brand, agencies will fight you tooth and nail. On top of that, if you go cross-platform or off-platform, does everyone know what that means? Cross-platform or off-platform? So if you have O&Os, which is my owned and operated channels, everyone looks at your metrics and they say, how many uniques does Vice have? Well, who cares? Because if I'm on Snapchat, if I'm on Facebook, we have billions of views on YouTube. Yuko, Todu, television, Verizon. I want to be everywhere. As long as I can make money and have eyeballs and put my content out, it doesn't matter. The problem is if you go off O&O, everyone likes to watch that. And if they're your competitors, they like to bash the shit out of you. So you have everybody putting these roadblocks up if you want to innovate. And if you want to change, there's problems. Because everyone loves disruption. Everyone, oh, Shane's a disruptor. Everyone loves disruption. Until you actually disrupt something, then they hate your guts. TV doesn't want you to program mobile. TV wants you to program TV. Online doesn't want you to leave. Because even though we all know where we have to get to, even though we all know the solution, do we work together to get to the promised land? You know the answer. What's the answer? No. We fight it. So a perfect example of this happened to me last week. I'm in the bath, which I generally am. I'm drinking wine. I'm crying, as I do of a Tuesday. And the media show comes on the BBC. And they're talking about Vice. They're talking about our upcoming launch of Viceland in the UK. Come on, Scotland! We're getting there. Now, being a megalomaniac, I like it when people talk about me. Thank you. You want to hear what they were saying? You guys are really British and polite. You want to hear what they were saying?
Yeah.
Okay, let's play it.
Tom Harrington of Enders Analysis. He's been looking at Vice and he joins me now. Tom, thanks very much indeed for joining us. This is a huge expansion. It won't come cheap, I don't suppose. Why would Vice be doing this?
Well, it is highly counterintuitive that they would do that. If you just look at the brand trajectory, and this really is a sort of devolution.
Good. Highly counterintuitive. Put a pin in that. I want you to remember that. Roll.
I mean, it's expensive to get channel carriage, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Overall, and if
Definitely.
you're doing it in sort of 40-odd countries or thereabouts, that's not going to come cheap.
It's a very expensive process, and that's why it is so very surprising. And what they have actually online is not particularly compelling. And even if the people can find it, we don't know where it will be on the APG in the UK, but even if they can find it, it's already available online, basically all their stuff.
Both good points. Let's leave the highly uncompelling content to the side for a second. 2 points I'd like to point out. One is, we don't pay. We get paid for every network that we do. We get paid for every show that we do. That's how we make our money. One little wrinkle. The other wrinkle is, it's not our online stuff that everybody has. We're making bespoke, tailor-made things specifically for TV. But I couldn't get enough of this show, and I liked how objective the presenter was. Let's see how they ended up on the show.
In a word, what is the analyst's view of the economics of this, the finances of this? Is this going to make money? Or...
I don't think it will. Ad revenue in the US has been apparently they're booked out for the next 2 months. Their ad inventory.
2 years, was it?
Or 2 years apparently. This is what they're saying, and they're very successful in their native advertising, and there will be some revenue from that, but they're not going to attract anybody actually watching those ads.
So, is there any chance? Do you think? Well. So they're going to run out of money then? Or what happens? How does it keep going?
Well, I guess the money comes from, they're online, and they continue to subsidise it, hoping that it all works together in a beautiful wheel that just sort of rolls Vice all the way up to the top.
I don't know if I'm supposed to feel bad about that or not. I mean, that sounds pretty good. A beautiful wheel that rolls all the way to the top. Terrible. Oh, gosh. Now, what we learned that our colleagues in media here in the UK failed to understand is that the economics of TV drive a high quality and dense library that you can leverage into mobile, online, and OTT. Mobile is the key here, because carriers need to drive data usage to make money. And the best way to do that is with video, which means lots of video, lots and lots of high-quality video daily. And they'll pay for it. They'll pay a lot of money for it. So how do you get this content? Well, this is the problem. You need a content generation engine that you specifically build for this purpose, otherwise known as TV. Now, when I said here in the UK that we were going to do 12 of these content generators, otherwise known as networks, in 12 months, everyone rolled their eyes and they said, "Oh, crazy old Shane, he's on the acid again." And it's true, we didn't do 12. We did 44 networks in 4 months. In fact, we're up to 58 now. Now, these are 24-hour TV channels in which, in most cases, are already married to mobile deals. We get paid for each show, for each network, for each mobile deal. We make the media, we license the media, we own the media, and we monetize that media for 3 or 4 different ways per territory, and then we do it all again globally. So every country we add adds more content, more licensing, more brands, more direct-to-consumer relationships, which in turn drives more revenue. And this, according to the experts in the BBC Media Show, is going backwards. Pause. I have to catch my breath because I'm incensed. Not really. When I was in university, they said for a really good essay, you have to have a swing. What a swing is? When you throw a really good curve ball. Here's the swing. That's meta for me to tell you that. Here comes the swing, everybody. Humans fear change. It's natural. Humans love to fear. Pretty good swing? No? Hi. Did you wave at me, or was that just a weird thing? So in the same bath, literally in the same bath, after the BBC, I take very long baths, I was reading The Spectator. It's an article that's "Why Can't We See That We're Living in a Golden Age" by Johan Norberg, who wrote, and I'll quote it, "We're hardwired to fear, revolved to be suspicious and fretful. Fear and worry are tools of survival. The hunters and the gatherers who survived sudden storms and predators were the ones who had a tendency to scan the horizon for new threats rather than sit back and enjoy the view. They passed their stress genes on to us." Interesting to know. Because I look at this fear, and sometimes this fear is crippling, but this fear is definitely holding us back. But the article is incredibly interesting because it goes on to note that since the Cold War ended, extreme poverty has decreased 37% to 9.6%. Sorry, from 37% to 9.6%. In single digits for the first time in history. And during the last 25 years, global economic wealth, or GDP per capita, has increased almost as much as it did during the preceding 25,000 years. And that's not just economically, because socially, we have poverty, malnutrition, illiteracy, child labor, infant mortality are falling faster than at any other time in history. Now, this is for many reasons. Technology, education, globalization, better medical care. And of course, one of the biggest reasons for this change is a free, vibrant, intelligent, media that is driving this golden age that we live in. That was a pretty good fucking swing. So we're moving forward, and that's important. It really is important. Because we have to know that we're making progress. We have to be positive. Things are getting better. But they're by no means perfect, which brings me finally to the long-winded point of this lecture. We're still facing serious global challenges, environmental issues, economic disparity, women's rights, LGBT issues, social justice. These issues loom large over the next generation as they assume their rightful role as a cultural hegemon globally. Now, these are massive and seemingly insoluble issues that are surrounded by so much fear, so much disenfranchisement. Yet if we look back over what we have accomplished in the last 25 years alone, I think it gives tremendous hope. All we have to do is try. Now, trying sounds simple, and when you do it many times, you're met with derision. Like I said before, everyone loves a disruptor till you actually disrupt something. Then watch out. Out come the knives. For example, when people ask me about brands like Unilever and their commitment to sustainability, it's always with skepticism. How can they really be committed to sustainability? Can any brand really be environmentally conscious? Can they make a difference? Etc. And my reply is always the same. Yes. Emphatically yes. Why? Because they have to. And so do we. Media has to weigh in as well, as does the consumer, as does the voter, all of us. If we want to reduce carbon emissions by 80%, which is what we need to do to survive, then we have to start working together for that change. And who has to change the most? Media. Now, we all know that a lot of media out there is derivative. If American Idol is number one in America, then we have The Voice in Australia. And if The Voice in Australia is number one, we have X Factor in Great Britain, and so on and so on. In many cases, we just make what's been successful before. Now, the reason why all this chaos in media is happening is because the new audience, the new purchasing power of Gen Y, realizes that the vapid and vacuous shit isn't going to get us where we need to go culturally, socially, or economically. Come on, Scotland! Now, we do a lot of research globally on our hundreds of millions of monthly users. And do you want to know what their top passion points are? Music, number one. Not surprising. Number two, the environment. Number three, civil rights. Number four, income inequality. Number five, social justice. And number six, LGBT issues. Now, this shows that Gen Y knows what side of history they want to be on. But are they getting the media that satisfies these passion points? Simply put, no. That's the big white space that's out there now. And all of the people here down in the main row, just ask yourself this, and ask yourself honestly. As an industry, are we making enough of this content? Do we push it? Do we fight for it? Do we market it? Well, I asked myself that exact question. And the honest answer was no. So overnight, we changed our brand. From the hipster's Bible talking about rare denim, cocaine, and supermodels. It was fun. to doing environmental programming, social justice, women's issues, and of course, music. I'm not stupid, I still need to make money. And guess what happened? Our business grew. Our audience exploded. And we made more money. Now, this is good, because if you make more money, you can make more content. And the secret of our success can be traced to the day when we changed our content. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be ugly. It can be exciting, it can be beautiful, it can be fun. But there has to be some depth to it. MacTaggart himself knew that. In his day, he tackled class, race relations, capital punishment, homosexuality, abortion. So let's talk about some of those things. When we started doing environmental programming on HBO, I said music is number one. You had me at hello. Oh, I've lost my place now, I gotta go. When we first started doing environmental programming, it changed everything because it won us our first Emmy and it became the most watched episode we'd ever done. Now, I'm gonna announce something that might freak some people out. I'm gonna stretch. For the first time ever in the MacTaggart lecture, we're going to show video. In the same call, when I made my shocking and bombastic headline, I said, what's this whole MacTaggart thing, And they said, well, it's the biggest thing, media and TV. And they've never ever played any TV. All right, then. I'm not afraid. Let's play some TV. Roll the fucking clip.
This part of West Antarctica is going to fall apart no matter what.
How much sea level rise is contained in the ice?
So Pine Island, Thwaites, and its neighbors contain about 1 meter global sea level rise. If that whole sector goes down to sea, it will entrain the retreat of the rest of West Antarctica. We're talking about 3 to 5 meters sea level rise.
So 1 meter would be a global catastrophic event, but 3 meters would remap the world as we know it.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a holy shit moment.
That's not holy shit, it's worse than that.
It's worse than holy shit.
We're not ready for this.
Now what I learned, thank you. Hooray, the world is ending. He's actually the number one scientist. I'll go off script for a second. I did a shoot with climate deniers because I like to hear both sides of the story, and everyone kept saying, well, there's more sea ice than there's ever been before. I mean, goddamn, Antarctica's heating up. And so I said, okay, well, fuck, that sounds bad. So I went to Antarctica, and he's the number one glaciologist in the world. And he's like, no, Shane, it is melting as fast as it can. And I said, why doesn't anyone know that? And he said, as a scientist, it's not my job to tell anyone. Which actually makes a bit of sense when you think about it. Guess whose job it is? Look to your right, look to your left. Now, what I learned from this is the first lesson that you'll ever learn in politics. Momentum is a motherfucker. Because with that Emmy came more access. And with that access came more and better opportunities for content. In fact, we have an upcoming nightly news show with HBO because of that episode. It also, because President Obama watched it, landed us an interview with the president about prison reform in America, where for the first time in history, a sitting president actually went to a prison. Because the US has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's inmates. It's the incarceration champion of the world. And the majority of these prisoners are black or Hispanic and jailed for non-violent drug crimes. Now, this is something the president felt strongly about. So we made this film with him. Roll the clip. You've done drugs, and you said, hey, look, I made bad decisions when I was young. Pretty much everybody does. But I was in a community where I had the ability to not have as harsh ramifications for one of my mistakes. Is one of the reasons why you're here today because perhaps you're the first president to feel empathy for the people that are here?
Well, I'd like to think other presidents feel the same way, but I can tell you I feel it acutely. When I moved to Chicago and I started doing community organizing in low-income neighborhoods, one of the most powerful thoughts that I had was driving by street corners with kids who, at that stage, I was in my early 20s, really weren't that far off from where I was, and knowing that the mistakes they made would land them potentially in prison in ways that just were not true for me growing up in Hawaii. The notion that you or I couldn't have easily been drawn into that somehow we wouldn't have fallen prey to the temptations of the streets, that doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel true. I didn't know my dad, and too many of our young people don't know their dads. And obviously, for them to be able to see you in a strong, positive way, that's going to have an impact. I met my dad for 1 month when I was 10 years old. That was the only time I met him my whole life. Even that little 1 month ended up having an impact on me. So, the kids are paying attention even when they act like they're not.
That's right. Now, I'm particularly proud of that show because today there are 3 bills on the House floor to change the mandatory minimum laws in America and try to correct this problem. I have a point, I'm not trying to self-aggrandize, but before I make the point, I'm going to self-aggrandize one more time. Because once you open your mind to what you can do, everything changes. For example, Vice, as many people here will know, was known as a male-skewing lads magazine, a boy brand. But when we started doing this new kind of content, everybody came to us. People that we would never thought would come to us. Gloria Steinem came to me and she said, you know what? There's more girls born every year than boys. Has been since time began. But for the first time in history, there's more men on earth than there are women. And I said, why? Violence against women. So guess what? We made a show about it. Let's roll the tape.
So I only want to remind you that what we are talking about is a revolution.
I have traveled the world as a writer and an activist for my entire life.
We are the women that our parents warned us about.
And I can tell you that by confronting the problems once marginalized as women's issues, we can tackle the greatest dangers of the 21st century.
Carguen armas. Sí, yo creo en la paz. Que no haya igualdad, pero por ahorita no veo realidad.
How many women have gone missing from the downtown east side?
At least over 200.
Why do all of these cases go unsolved?
They don't matter.
We need to recognize the damage that we are doing when we needlessly and unnecessarily put women and mothers in prisons.
16,000 girls have dropped out of schools in Zambia in 1 year due to child marriage.
From small villages to whole nations, we now know that the well-being of women determines the well-being of society.
यहाँ की औरतें भी मर्दों से कम नहीं तोड़ सकता, दुश्मन नहीं हिला सकता हमें.
The greatest indicator of the world's stability, wealth, and safety is the status of women.
Now, because of that show, I'm getting a bit verklempt. But it's emotional for me. Why? Because of that show, Spike Jones and Ellen Page came to me and they said, we want to do a show about LGBT issues called Gaycation. Woman is up for an Emmy. Gaycation is up for an Emmy. All of this is the content that we're making to put on Viceland that's going to be available here in the UK. What I'm trying to get at here is if you make this kind of content, your audience will get bigger, you'll win awards, you'll make money, which allows you to make more content. And I'm not up here saying I'm the best. I'm going back to my environmental thing. I'm saying we all have to do it. All of us. The apprentices who are here today, the guys downstairs, advertisers, press. Even if you're not doing, we have to build companies so that we can do it. We have to imprint our content upon the social fabric. Now recently, if we can put a picture up, I was honored, with an honorary doctorate in journalism from UAL, University of Arts, London. Now, as a Canadian, which is a nation of sort of not-so-secret Anglophiles, I was bursting with pride of a colonial coming home to the mother country, to be recognized for something other than being good at hockey. But seriously, I love this pic. I love it. Because Grayson Perry is the chancellor of the biggest art school in the world. He's a true revolutionary, and he's changing things, a la MacTaggart. Because the most inspiring thing for me is that young kids come here to Great Britain from all over the world, learning progressive, groundbreaking, tolerant, inclusive fucking shit. And when they came up to get their degrees, they passed me, and I thought, I would have fucking loved to have gone to this school. What a bright future we have with these kinds of students learning art, architecture, journalism. What a great future we have. And we should be doing the exact fucking same thing with media. And that's why I'm here. You guys. The young people in the network, the one-to-watch programs, you're our future. And we in media need to be more like Grayson and provide resources, education, time, money to make sure that you know what we know now and take us even further. The spirit of MacTaggart and the spirit of this lecture is the same spirit of Grayson Perry. All of us going out there need to change the world. There's a revolution going on in media, and it's scary, it's fast, and quite frankly, it's going to be ugly. But it's also necessary to keep going forward, to change things, because that's what we have to do. Change has never been so important, never so crucial, especially in media. Just look at what we're faced with. We have a panel, which I highly recommend you go to, about ISIS on Friday, which is entitled, ISIS, the Best Brand Marketers Out There. And by the way, we have to fight them with media. Trump, Brexit. All of us in media have the responsibility to go out there and fight governments, fight economic injustice, and to work for the environment. We all have to stand up. And that's what I'm here to say to you tonight. You are the thought leaders, past, present, and future. Your media will make it to all the screens, to all the audiences around the world. We have to be worthy of that audience. You can make a difference. You can change things. Indeed, you must change things. Now, I know I bashed the BBC a bit in this talk. And I want to say to everybody out there that the BBC is one of the best networks in the world. It has been for quite some time. That said, it'll get a lot better when I take it over.